I've had my bell rung, and I've seen stars. They both sound pretty good if you ask me. Bell ringing is melodious and lots of music going along with it, and seeing stars sounds bright and beautiful. What if instead I told you that I've experienced traumatic brain injuries in which my brain itself was stretched, compressed, and even potentially torn? It sounds a lot worse when you put it that way. And let me paint you a picture of it. As you can see, during a concussion or even a subconcussive incident, the brain is violently affected. But what's really bad is when these build up on one another, because then you have a much more debilitating effect. And this condition used to be known as dementia pugilistica. It's kind of a weird word. It's Latin for punch-drunk syndrome, because it was most common. There's going to be more graphics, so just be careful if that's going to bother you. There's more, and it's most common in boxing. But today, it's much more prevalent in the media with football injuries. So concussions like this one on James Stark. Now, as you can see in this picture, that what they're suffering from later in life is chronic tragic encephalopathy. And as you can see here, pictured is the brain of a healthy person, a boxer, and a football player, respectively. And the latter two are each suffering from varying stages of CTE, as it's abbreviated. So CTE is really a debilitating condition that plagues a lot of former athletes. It results in dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's, depression, and a much higher increased risk of suicide as per the Mayo Clinic. And as you can see, the main indicator of it is this brownish protein. It's called tau protein. And really, the only way of indicating it is in an autopsy after death. So there's really no way of knowing if someone has it when they're still playing in the game or even during retirement until they die and you can actually conduct an autopsy. However, this medical technology is more recent. So back around the turn of the 20th century, for example, around Teddy Roosevelt's time, we have this quote from him that he has no sympathy for injuries so long as they're not fatal. A little bit brash, Teddy Roosevelt was a rough and tumble kind of guy, but if he knew about the tragic long-term effects that some of these injuries can have, perhaps he would have thought about it a little differently. In the modern game, we have more awareness for CTE, and we have players who are bigger, stronger, faster, and capable of imposing a lot more damage on each other. And any discussion on CTE really wouldn't be appropriate without some examples, and there are two key examples that a lot of the literature discusses. The first is Dave Duerson, pictured on the left. He played for the Chicago Bears in the 1980s. He was a safety, big, hard-hitting type guy. Suffered from CTE later in life, at least he suspected so. In his suicide note that he wrote to his family, actually, he asked that his brain be sent to Boston University, where they have a very impressive lab for testing for CTE, and it was confirmed after he did commit suicide that he did indeed suffer from CTE. The tau protein was found, and it was confirmed. Another very compelling example is Ray Easterling on the right there. He was another, enforcer, hard-hitting type safety. He played in the league in the 1970s, I believe, for the Falcons. He also suffered from CTE. After he retired, he struggled with dementia for a lot of his post-retirement career, and again ended up committing suicide, a self-inflicted gun wound as well. And while these examples are compelling in themselves, it's most pointed to compare two people. So the first example I have here for a comparison, at least, is Junior Seau. He played in the 1990s. He was a linebacker. He's wearing a Patriots jersey there. That number 55 is the jersey that I wore probably at least once a week in 5th grade. I love that 55 Patriots jersey. But he was drafted by the Chargers. That's where he was made famous. He played for about 15 years, made 12 consecutive Pro Bowls. He was a phenomenal player. Took his life at the age of 43 in 2012, as you can see there. Suffered from CTE very heavily after he retired. He kind of fell victim to that tough, macho, invincible type culture that the league perpetuated. His wife is quoted as saying, he bounced back from anything, could always keep on playing. He was a warrior, and football is not ballet. He really sticks with that mentality that Teddy Roosevelt espoused in, playing is all about pushing through pain and being macho, and that's really what it means to be a man. However, according to a staff writer for Football Operations, in lieu of his suicide, the league needed to do away with the tough guy rhetoric, and there's nothing more clear than them doing away with that rhetoric than the example of Chris Borland. He was drafted in 2014 by the San Francisco 49ers, and his rookie season, he was an all-star breakout season, leading tackler for the team, phenomenal rookie season, and then he retired at the end of that season at the age of 24, citing fear of concussions and the traumatic brain injuries that other players have suffered from. And just the fact that he retired at 24 would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. Even today, it was unusual. It received a lot of criticism, but 20 years ago, it just would not have been able to happen. And it really shows the beginning of that climate shift in the NFL from macho and to more logical and rational. With that, he did receive a lot of criticism, like I said, but there was positive responses to him. For example, defensive end Chris Long for the St. Louis Rams is quoted as tweeting at him, it takes a man to be logical. And so this is the first time we really see the shift from Teddy Roosevelt's definition of manlyhood that Junior Seau really fit with, of being tough and macho and invincible, to Chris Borland being logical and rational. And this really comes up in two main places in modern culture that I was able to find. The first, President Barack Obama is quoted as saying that he's not sure if he would let his son play football. And you can see that's a very stark comparison to what Teddy Roosevelt said. Teddy Roosevelt was very big into sports. His son was a huge athlete, and so it's a very stark comparison between the two. And the other is this movie that's slated to come out around Christmas time this year called Concussion, where quintessential man's man Will Smith is playing Nigerian forensic pathologist Bennett Omalu. Bennett Omalu did a lot of CTE research for former players, and a lot of the stuff he found was very damaging to the league's perception, so the NFL didn't let him share it. They forced him to not publicize the information. And just the fact that this movie is coming out is showing that shift away from the macho-ness to the more rational side as people are starting to worry about their own health. And so really, football is a game that's steeped in violence, and a lot of people argue that it shouldn't change. Former tight end Nate Jackson says that football isn't safe, just like water isn't dry. A lot of people argue that it should stay the way it is, but with the increased awareness of CTE, as well as a lot of these tragic instances of former players, the league clearly needs to change, as can be seen from the shift from Junior Seau to Chris Borland. Thank you.